This is the new iPad Pro. I'm going to go through its design and features, and at the end, I'll let you know if it's worth buying or not. And if you want the more detailed written review, go to techtechandmoretech.com or check the link in the description below. Where do I start with the iPad Pro? I could start with the gorgeous new screen that goes almost edge to edge and adds Face ID. I could start with the redesigned body that's now flat on all edges and thinner than before. I could even start with the USB-C port that replaced the Lightning connector. Instead, I'm going to start with a quote from Tim Cook.
iPad is the clearest expression of our vision of the future of personal computing.
Tim Cook said this on stage when he unveiled the first iPad Pro 3 years ago. Since then, we've had a few hardware and software updates. But honestly, that vision of the future of computing seems hazy as ever. I bought the original iPad Pro on day one. I was giddy. I finally had the gigantic screen that I've always wanted. I could have two full-size apps side by side. It was the best note-taking experience you could ever have. I loved it. But in the 3 years that I've owned the iPad Pro, I've never felt there's anything particularly professional about it. It was just really big and had slightly better hardware than the regular iPad. In this regard, it is a reflection of the Mac lineup. The MacBook Pro runs the same software as the MacBook Air, just with better hardware. But if Apple sees that the iPad is the future of computing, it first needs to surpass the present of computing, and that's the Mac. In the 3 years that the iPad Pro has been out, iOS on the iPad has barely made any significant progress in surpassing the Mac. And in some cases, they've actually taken a step backwards. Here's the most obvious example that I can think of where they messed up progress on the iPad. With iOS 11, they introduced the dock, which allowed you theoretically to jump between apps faster. It's great, but when the iPad Pro came out, they came out with split view, which let you have two applications running simultaneously side by side. Now in iOS 10, in order to activate that, you would slide in from the side and it would show you the most recent application you had. Then you would slide down, it would show you all the different applications that supported split view mode, and it made switching those applications seamless. To do the same thing now is an absolute nightmare. If you want to do a split view mode and the second application that you want isn't on your dock, then what you have to do is go all the way home, find that application, open it, get the dock back up, and then drag the first application that you wanted and finally have them side by side. It's about 10 more steps and it's way worse. Now that might seem nitpicky, but the principle is, if you want a device to be the future of computing, it first needs to surpass the current standard of computing. For the most part, I trust that Apple's leadership team does indeed have a vision and a pathway to how the iPad will realize that vision. They've certainly set up the hardware to be ready for whatever changes they decide to implement in the future. And the new iPad Pro hardware is second to none. From the gorgeous 120Hz screens to the overkill A12X processor. In fact, recent benchmarks have even shown that the new A12X, which is a souped up version of the same processor found in the new iPhones, is as powerful as the Core i7s found in the latest MacBook Pros. That's impressive. They've reduced the bezel so now the screen stretches out to all four corners. Of course, there's still some bezels so you have something to hold on to, so we don't have a complete edge to edge like in Westworld or something. But nevertheless, the screen is absolutely gorgeous to look at. But when you look at an older iPad that still has the top and bottom bezels, it looks outdated real fast. The screen uses the same tricks as the iPhone XR to allow for rounded corners so that it matches the contour of the frame. This means that the home button and Touch ID with it have been removed in favor of Face ID. Face ID is still in version 1, but it is quicker on the new iPad than it is on the old iPhone X. And unlike on the iPhones, you can use it in any orientation you want. Left, right, upside down, upright, doesn't matter, it'll work. It even has a feature where it'll tell you camera is covered and it'll point to where the camera is so you can move your fingers and unlock your iPad. It's definitely a nice little feature. The 2018 iPad Pro comes in two screen sizes, 11-inch and 12.9-inch. The 11-inch is essentially the old 10.5-inch but with the screen stretched out a little, whereas the 12.9-inch is the same screen size but in a smaller body. This means that the 12.9-inch iPad is no longer going to be gargantuan and is definitely going to be much more pleasant for mobile use. As a side note, why can't it just be 11 and 13-inch? Why do we have to exactly say 12.9-inch? Can't we just round up and make it 13? Gestures have always been a big part of the iPad's use case, and now that the home button is gone, they are an essential part to the iPad's use case. For anyone that's been using iPads for a couple years, they've all probably learned the different 4 and 5 finger swipe gestures. Thankfully, Apple hasn't gotten rid of these 4 and 5 finger gestures, but I do kind of wish that they put a little bit more thought into the new ones. Swiping up from the bottom of the screen now can invoke one of 3 different actions depending on how far and how fast you swipe. If you swipe up just a little, it'll show you the dock. If you swipe up and go about halfway, it'll show you the app switcher. If you swipe up all the way, it'll take you home. But if you swipe up fast, it'll take you home regardless of where you end up swiping. Now, I'm a pretty tech-savvy person, so this isn't really an issue for me. But if you try and explain that to someone that has a much more basic understanding of technology, they're gonna look at you like you're a crazy person. There's also a new Apple Pencil, and it's better than the old one in every single way. It no longer has that lightning connector, so you don't have to plug it into your iPad anymore like it's some sort of bayonet. Instead, they flattened one side and added magnets to it. There's a designated area in the side of the iPad that has a little magnetic strip, and that's where you can attach your new Apple Pencil. This is great, because in one move they solved 3 problems. This is both how you connect to your iPad, how you charge the pencil, and how you don't lose the pencil. The magnets are strong enough that it's not going to fall off particularly easily at all. You probably don't want to hold it this way, but it's great for carrying around, and even if you put it in your backpack, it's pretty good so far. The new Apple Pencil is a little bit shorter than the old one, and it also has a new matte finish to it. Additionally, they've added a double tap feature to it. So now, depending on which application you're in, you can double tap the pencil and it'll invoke some sort of action. The default one is, for example, to go between a pencil and an eraser. Another one step forward, half step back kind of thing with the iPad Pro is a new Usbc connector. It's replaced the familiar Lightning port with the USB-C, which is the port to end all ports. This is clearly a big step in the right direction in terms of making this iPad a very future-proof kind of device. However, they took a half step back because they're completely kind of limiting the use of the USB-C to just about all the same kind of things the Lightning port could do. They show how you can connect your iPad Pro to a 5K monitor. Okay, that's impressive that it can run a 5K monitor. But you could always connect your iPad to some sort of external screen. All it'll do is either mirror the screen or extend it depending on the application. But all iPads have been able to do this for years now. They've also been showing how you can plug your iPad directly into your camera now. But you've always kind of been able to do that. You've been able to buy the USB to camera adapter for years now that let you plug your camera directly into your iPad. And in both cases, all you can do is just import your photos into the Photos app. So for example, if you're a professional that wants to, let's say, not use the Photos app and use something like Lightroom, well, you kind of have to take extra steps. You have to first import into Photos, and then select all those photos and import into Lightroom. And despite having a Files application, which is probably the most useless application ever, the iPad Pro can't read any sort of external storage. No thumb drives, no external hard drives, nothing. It just doesn't give it. I'd argue that plugging a thumb drive and transferring files from one computer to the other is probably the most common thing anyone does with a computer. Yet for some reason, the future of computing doesn't accept that reality. Fundamentally, Apple seems to want to redefine our reality and how we interact with computers. And I'm okay with that. Change things up, I don't care. But that future reality needs to be better than the reality I'm currently in. As a final example of the iPad's inability to be a computer replacement, in my opinion, is a good old copy and paste. Or more specifically, text selection. First of all, there are some applications that completely disable text selection altogether, and that is just ridiculous. Secondly, it's a little bit too finicky for my liking, but it also just takes way too long even when you get it right. Sure, maybe it's only a 10-second process, but when you're used to a 2-second process on your computer, that really just disrupts your workflow, and that is probably the worst of all. So all of that brings us to the golden question. Should you buy this? Let's start with the price. Everything this year got more expensive. The 11-inch iPad Pro starts at $799 for the 64 gig, and the 12.9-inch starts at $999. That is a $200 increase from last year. The Apple Pencil has also increased in price from $99 to $129, and they don't even give you replacement tips anymore. What the hell? The Smart Keyboard has also received an increase in price and been slightly redesigned to now be more flat and give you 2 different viewing angles when you're typing. The increase in price is now $179 for the 11-inch and $199 for the 12.9-inch. For those of you keeping track, that's a ton of money. The iPad Pro is in a very odd place in Apple's lineup. They claim it to be a computer replacement, but the only people that can really use it as a complete computer replacement are either going to be niche application users or very basic computer users. But both of these users can just get the $329 iPad, which is plenty fast and supports Apple Pencil input, and you can just get a third-party keyboard and have just about all the same functionality as an iPad Pro, but for literally half the price. If you wanted to get the 12.9-inch iPad Pro for the screen size, and you wanted the Smart Keyboard too, you'd be looking at a minimum of $1,200. Coincidentally, the new MacBook Air also costs $1,200, and that's a full-on computer. Ultimately, I think the iPad Pro these days is for the kind of person that looks at their bank account and thinks, there's way too much money in there. I don't need all that. I'm gonna go treat myself to a nice new toy. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, hit that like and subscribe button for plenty more videos to come. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I will get to them as best I can. And until next time, see ya. Oh my god, it's so shiny and pretty.